Take up a lot of space.
And Jenny's going to give us our roll call.
Pat Bradford,
I am here.
Charlene Thompson, Hannah Moon, Jenna Lennon, Jared Worthington,
Here.
Kim Clark,
Here.
Philip Sutton, Bill Rivenbark, Leanne Pierce, Rob Zappel, Stephanie Walker,
Here.
Amanda, here, Eric Cradle, Lisa, Christopher Riley, John Hennett, Natalie English,
Okay. Here. We also have present Board Attorney Brian Kromke, Finance Director, probably got your title wrong, CFO, Ashley Sutton, Dr. Barnes, and Joyce Bristow. So with that, my agenda says we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance next, so let's do that next. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now we'll have an invocation that is provided by by Pastor Lisa Moore remotely.
Hello, I'm Pastor Lisa Moore from Global River Church, and I'm honored to give today's invocation. Let's pray. Father God, I thank you for each one of your servants who are here in today's meeting. Your word says in Proverbs 9:10 that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So, Father, I pray for each person that they would both know and fear you, and thus be filled with wisdom and understanding. Holy Spirit, I invite you to come and invade their meeting with your presence, and especially with your kindness, gentleness, self-control, and peace. I pray that every person would be treated with the dignity and respect that they deserve, since they are made in the image of God. I pray, Father, that they would make wise and righteous decisions on behalf of our county and our precious children. Father, would you give them creative ideas as they work through each challenge, and give them the strategy to enable all the pieces to fit together. In closing, I pray this blessing over each person present. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. In Jesus' holy name, amen.
Chris, you're right there. Next, we have approval of agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? And a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. All right. You should have in front of you a copy of the minutes. If not, they're online. I will move that we approve the agenda, approve the minutes as written. Do I have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Okay, next up, the meeting follow-up from last month. You have a stack of handouts, and Ashley Sutton is going to lead this.
Sure, so I wanted to go through the handouts in your packet, and I do apologize, they're not numbered, so I will do better with that next time. But behind the minutes that were just approved, the first item that was asked for in the last meeting was a brief job description of certified instructional support staff, so that the committee could see the difference as far as the services that are being provided between the difference between these three different jobs, or actually four different positions. So we've provided that for you here. And certainly we'll be glad. We've got some principals here that can, and a teacher that can help us if you have any additional questions as far as what services or what responsibilities these individuals have within our schools. Then on the next page and the next 6 pages, one of the things that was asked for through the survey, and I think this was also asked for in the last Finance Committee meeting, was a breakdown of federal expenditures going back to 2018. And so I couldn't get everything to fit nicely on one sheet without it being super small. So I've done 2 years on each page. And so it goes from 2018, so that was our pre-COVID, all the way to 2024 is the last year that's covered on the last 2 pages. And certainly I know you'll want to take some time and look at that, but certainly be happy to answer any questions you have related to any of those changes. Then the next handout that you have in that section is another request that came out through the survey, and I believe once again was also asked for in the last committee meeting, was to see our total expenditures, not just operating expenses, but total expenditures for the going back to 2020 through 2024 with a little bit more detail. So you may remember in our slide, we had broke those expenses, operating expenses, down by salaries, employer benefits, and like purchase services, but we were asked to provide an additional level. So for example, on that first page, total provided benefits, this is the handout that's expenditures from 2018 to 2024. And sorry, that should be 2020 in the heading. But on that first page, it talks about employer provided benefits and gives additional information. So, you know, that first line is accountability services, which is our testing, and shows expenses for each of those different areas related to employer provided benefits. So we provided that additional level of detail for the committee. Once again, if you would like to see an additional level, or if you would like to see the expenses in a different format, we would be glad to provide that to the committee. And so that report covers the next 3 pages in your handout.
Okay, thanks.
There is one.
Welcome, Commissioner Zappel, and I see Ms. Justice snuck in while I wasn't paying attention, so welcome. Is this a good time for anyone to ask a question about what you've seen so far? I know it's a lot of material, and
It is a lot of data, so I would certainly, especially on those larger reports, the expenditures, total expenditures for those years, and the federal expenditures for those years. If you haven't had a chance to look at this, with the holidays and everything, we didn't get the handouts out until, was it Tuesday afternoon. So certainly, if you want to take some time and send me some questions that you come up with later, I would certainly respond to the whole group or bring it back to the next committee meeting.
I'm just curious, purchase services?
Mm-hmm.
Explain what, I see the line item here.
Yep, so those will be like contracted services. So any services that we're not able to provide in-house and we have to contract with someone outside the school district to provide those services. So it might be HVAC work or consulting type work. It could be a variety of things, but it's things that we have to contract for that we don't have the skills in-house or either the staffing levels in-house to perform those services.
One example is we have to contract with the police department to do our fingerprint checking.
Right,
So that's
yep.
a contracted service.
Right.
So just out of curiosity, what are school leadership services?
So, let me look at,
That's under employer provided benefits, right?
school,
Well, it's on several.
so, yeah, so I'm not seeing that exact line on mine, but, under federal expenditure, sorry about that. Yeah, so school, school leadership services is gonna be, related to, it could be principals, so it's, principals, assistant principals, type expenses. So it's expenses at that level.
And let me interject, can everyone make sure that they see the little green light on the microphone closest to them so that we're recording and we're live streaming today? Any more questions about that chart, those numbers?
I have a question not on that chart, on the brief job description.
Yeah, I do too. Okay, let's come back to it. Let's take care of this now. Ms. Justice?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, because I looked at this before I got here too. So these are particular requests that people had during the last meeting, because the budget's a heck of a lot more involved than this. And these are basically benefits of what we're looking at? Like retirement, et cetera, et cetera.
No,
What do you define the word benefit?
So this would be, and it depends on which document you're looking at. So one's federal, so of course those are just going to be federal expenditures. But the other one that says expenditures is total expenditures for those years that we have listed, is summarized at, so for example, on the first page of that document, it starts with employer-provided benefits.
Okay, and what do you mean by the term benefits? I'm just trying to...
Yep, so that would be Social Security,
Okay.
retirement, health insurance, so employer-provided benefits to our employees.
Okay, I'm just trying to, all the
Yep.
words.
Yeah, and so, look these over, and then email questions, specific questions, and we'll try to get that. We're just following up on what we discussed last meeting. These are the handouts to go with what we discussed last meeting. Ashley, are you ready to move on to this pie chart, or can we ask a question about description of certified instructional support?
Yeah, that's.
Oh, sorry,
uh-huh.
okay. Then, Lisa, you go first.
Thank you. So on the various jobs, there's a state allocation and a New Hanover County Schools allocation, and they don't seem to compare apples to apples. Is there a way to put them in kind of a more comparable format? Because I'm assuming that the New Hanover County Schools allocation is probably higher than the state allocation, but
I can
how
speak
much
to that
higher?
a little bit. Some of the confusion about that is the state gives you of allotment formula for this called instructional support, but they don't break it down by school. They just say for every blank number of kids, you get one. And so the state allocation ends up being one for every 417 kids. Well, we know that you can't break a person down to some of that extent. So we end up doing an allotment formula that is more aligned towards what the student need is versus what the state allots us at. So what I could do, if you'd like, is I could say one per elementary. So let's just look at the first one. Our counselors, we give one counselor to every elementary school regardless of their size. What I could do is, if you wanted, I could say, well, we'll look at Williams Elementary you have about 380, 400 kids? Tell me what you are now. Look at that, I nailed it. Ding. So 370, that would be 0.8 of a counselor. But we don't do it that way because you can't have a staff member trying to see that many students in that many different schools. So we sort of make an allotment formula that makes sense for what the student need is, but then the state's allotment doesn't take that into account. Yes, ma'am.
May I ask a clarifying question of what you're trying to get at? Are you speaking to with the combined efforts of the county to see where we are with combination of state and to get that, or are you asking specifically?
I'm asking specifically how the New Hanover County Schools allocation and understand your explanation about 1 for elementary, 2 for middle, how that compares to the state allocation. And I guess in my mind, I'm oversimplifying it and saying if we have X number of counselors and we have X number of students, then
Yeah,
there's
so the confusing thing about certified instructional support is that title at the state level encompasses a lot of different jobs. It encompasses social worker, counselor, instructional coach, media coordinator. So all those sort of are in there together. So if you wanted to look at the grand scheme of things, they would give us 60 of all of those for the whole district. I think that's where the really breakdown comes in, because 60, we have more than 60 counselors alone, not even counting media coordinators, not even counting social workers, not even counting the needs that we have that are greater than that. So the state really doesn't break it down fine enough for us to do that. Does that work? Okay.
And I have 2 things to that. And I'm thinking, when I look at this, for example, state allocation 1 per 4.1712, 1 per elementary. If we could further drill this down and list the number of elementary, the number of middle students,
Sure, I can do that.
I think it would help me understand this page, if I could see the numbers for each one of the allocations we're making.
Sure.
And it's ballpark, it's not.
Yeah, and let me be clear, it's not 1 for 417 of each of those categories. It's 1 for 417 total. But I can do a greater breakdown for you of how many we have in each space. Sure.
That would be great. And then I want to put out something for discussion. We're not going to solve this today, but there's a school district economic rule out there. It sounds logical, and it's that 50% of the employees of the district should be forward-facing instructional. You've heard that before. Anyone? No one? It's out there. And so 50% less than 50% should be in the admin category. It divides it into teachers and admin. And I think it's a little loose, or a little too tight, because there's a whole nother group out there that's a subset of classified employees. And we want to talk about classified and certified again, just to refresh your memory. There's a lot of turkey on my head, so, and if I have trouble, I have to think, okay, certified means they got a certificate. You know, I know that some of you that aren't in academia might not grasp that, but there's that whole group that support the teacher efforts, the plumbers, the electricians, the bus drivers, the cafeteria workers, and so on. So I think it could probably be broken into 3, but if that's a norm out there that people hold up and say, well, what's your percentage of teachers to admin? I'd like to drill it down and have a conversation about where we really are so that we know, because I think the public perception might be different from what reality is. I don't know. We're just going to figure it out.
Madam Chair, I'll just respond to that. I mean, that I think to the normal person, and I'll put myself in that category, to be said that only 50% are forward-facing to the students and 50% are admin, that would come as a shock, I think, to a lot of parents.
No, that would mean you're out of balance. I may not have said that correctly. If it's 50-50, you're out of balance. Is the logic that's put behind it.
Whose logic?
It's just out there in the marketplace. But
according to the experts?
Well, it depends on who the expert is. But yeah.
That's my point.
So I just want, if that's out there,
Yeah.
is it true or is it not true? Is my question.
I see.
And if it's true, and if it's not true, and I don't think it can combine. I don't think you can just have those 2 groups. I think you'd at least leave the 3rd group.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see that. Wouldn't y'all like to see? I mean, just personally, I'd like to see it leveled out. And when you say, okay, we have this many that are classified and this many certified, that's still not enough of a drill down. So I want to work that through. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. I think that's part of what you hear and learning as far as the education, I think, of all of us. Well, what do we have here in New Hanover County? What is the percentage? Now that you brought up the question, are 50% of our monies teachers? Or what? I would have thought that it'd be much more, in the classroom.
Right.
Than, again, the 50-50 concept. So do we know what it is here, or is that something we have to tease out?
I don't, Dr. Barnes can speak to that. I don't think we classify it as those 2 groups.
Okay.
Dr. Barnes, go ahead. I see you, Ms. Justice.
So I think that the way that we break it down is basically three categories. You have certified, classified, and admin, which is about 4%, leadership, APs, principals, those kind of things. So certified, that sort of grouping is anybody who requires a license to complete their duties. Teacher, counselor, media coordinator, nurse, those groupings. Classified may or may not be directly forward-facing. I would consider a TA forward-facing. I would consider a bus driver forward-facing, right? But usually it's about a half-half breakdown. About half our staff is certified, half of our staff is classified. And that breakdown also includes things like fair Labor Standards Act, which people are exempt employees, which people are not, which people are hourly, which are not. But I would say if you wanted to break down of what you would consider forward-facing, I would consider a school-based employee forward-facing. Like whether or not I'm the data manager, I'm still seeing kids every day. Teacher assistants, certainly, we have more than 500 teacher assistants in our district alone. Those, while they're classified, are obviously forward-facing. So I think that breakdown, I think you have to be careful. I think we use certified, classified, and admin because that's the way that the breakdown works in payroll and things like that. But don't get assumed that means that all those are forward-facing or not, because they are different categories.
So what I'm saying is, let's talk about it, and I'd like to see it broken down to something that I can wrap around my head around. Now, Ms. Justice.
Okay, I'm basically piggybacking off what you said. First of all, I have never heard that kind of breakdown before, and I'm sure it came from someplace, but I've been doing this for, oh my God, over 30 years. And the general recognition is exactly what you said. You have certified, classified, admit, and then you have just about anybody that's in a school is forward-facing with kids. Because kids walk in the office and talk to the bookkeeper, the receptionist, people in the cafeteria. You're always working with kids. And so I think the whole concept of even thinking that 50 was administrator and 50 was forward-facing with kids makes no sense. I don't know where you got that figure, but in general, the public, I have never heard the public even express that was the right matrix or whatever for what's going on. So what's happening is exactly what you just said. Most, admit's a very small proportion. What would you say it is? You're closer to
4%.
4%, not 50%.
So when we look at, what we do look at is where we payroll, where we code people, like not who's your boss, but where do you live, right? Where's your location? And about 90% of the staff in the district are coded to schools. So those are people that work directly in a school with a school connected to a school. That 10% also includes some people that we put under like central office, even though they don't necessarily go there. Like the bus drivers, we all code them under central office because we can't poke them out to schools because they serve multiple schools. So you look at that, it's usually a 90-10 breakdown is what it usually is. Does that make sense?
I was going to suggest a pie chart showing classified, certified.
Yeah.
And then another pie chart that says forward-facing versus admin, I guess.
Yeah. And
because I think the public sees that, and like, these are people who directly interact with children. These are people who are.
And what I look at is there are people that directly support kids and then people who create the environment where those people can teach. Like your HVAC guy, he's not in a classroom. But boy, if he's not at Holly Tree, you know it, right? So I think, so part of what this is, part of what today is really for me is I'm doing about 7 different public-facing forums to discuss budget with the community, with APs, with principals, with teachers. And so getting questions like this to be able to put into the presentation for them is going to really be helpful because our job is really to help demystify all of this for the guy on the street, for the parents sitting there at Coddington, that kind of thing. So a pie chart like that makes a lot of sense where you'll just have to be able to go, I'm going to use my own judgment of what I call student-facing, right? Student-facing, in some ways, I look at a teacher in a classroom instructing kids, but directly impacting on kids is a broader number. So I can play with that a little bit, sure.
I have one more follow-up. Allocation, and you mentioned, Mary C. Williams might not have 417, but that that 1 per 417 is total population of elementary school kids, right?
It's 1 for every 417 kids you have in the district.
Okay, that's what, I just want to clarify that. So, and you make sure we get them allocated to each school.
Sir, and then we're responsible for deciding how they go. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But I think it does really highlight, and this is something that I've sang for a decade now, these allotment formulas do not meet the needs of kids today. And I would say not even close. So, but that's the guy who has to look at a principal in the face and say, you can't have another teacher, right? So that's where my problem comes in, because that 417 number is just ludicrous.
So I'm a big fan of charts. So a bar chart showing what the allocation from the state would give us versus what taxpayers or local taxpayers are funding.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah.
Okay, Dr. Merrick.
In another way, trying to understand apples and oranges from all these different years is how many kids are in a classroom. Like, we can see how much money we're spending, but the way that it doesn't add up is if our classroom are 20 children, but the next year there are 30 kids in a classroom, that doesn't show up in these numbers. What we're looking at is total amount spent or total amount received, and we can, maybe we can put that together in there, but I would love to see 2018, 2019, 2020, and look at average class size, because it also gives us some, input into how we're spending our money.
I think we have that. I think we got that a few months back. At least something to get started on that.
I think I sent you as a board an understanding of that, but I don't remember if I sent it before December or not, before you guys sat or not. I do, so, sorry to go rogue on you guys, but so class sizes, some of them are dictated by general statute, some of them are not. And so every semester, I monitor class sizes, specifically every grade level average, but I have to certify that K1 and 2 meet certain specific numbers. And then I also look at high school to say, how many classes at New Hanover are over 30? And where are they? And so I give you guys a breakdown of that, but what I can do is give like an average class size per year, understanding that by grade level, only works to K8. After that, it gets a little messier, right? Because then I have to do it by subject area or something else, because kids sometimes go in different grade level classes.
Just quick follow-up then. If what you're telling me is that we're at maximum every single year, then these numbers are apples and apples.
Right.
If we weren't at maximum and now we are over maximum, then it makes a difference.
Yeah, I will tell you that, again, my role is different a little bit now than it was last spring. But for years, what I would do is follow class size law for K3, which is no more than 21 kids in a kindergarten, 19 in first, 20 in second and third. And then fourth and fifth, I usually kept between 24 and 26 in a class. Middle school, I kept between 28 and 29 in a class. Then high school became 30 and above. But I do an analysis to see, are we keeping that percentage along or not? So I can get that to you guys, sure. Or what I'll probably start with is sending you directly what I did for the analysis in the fall, and you'll get another one in a couple of months.
Okay. Are we ready to move on?
One quick follow-up on that question.
Yes, sir.
So there's a chart in your annual report that shows, a statistic chart that shows pupil to teacher ratio, and it's been 14 to 15 for each of the past 10 years. It's not in your materials. This is just something I printed off your website, your annual report. So it shows the pupil to teacher ratio been 14 to 15 for each of the past 10 years. It seems pretty consistent. Is that an accurate kind of ratio to consider or not?
No. Yes and no. How about that? The reason that number seems a little low, because you can look at that and say, 14 or 15, that's great, but that also factors in small insular environments like separate settings, special ed, and things where teachers are doing resource classes, which may be 2 or 3 in a class, or 4 or 5 in a class. So that number is the way the state says, look how great we're doing. It doesn't really classify, because for every class of 30 you have a class of 4 or 5. So it doesn't necessarily balance exactly that way.
So it's an average?
It's an average.
It would indicate that it's roughly the same.
But roughly it says it stays around the same, yeah. And we did see a little bit of an increase in 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 this past year, just because we did come down in staffing a little bit. High school classes do tend to vary a little bit because some of our high school kids go out for half of the day. Like if you're at Laney's second period, don't stand near the door because a good number of kids will go out to CFCC or a good number of kids come back from CFCC. So those numbers do play a little. But generally what I do is I look at all of the classes in the district and then I separate out things like a kid is taking an online class and there's 2 kids in the class. Well, that doesn't really count. What are the numbers of people in regular classrooms being taught by our teachers in groups in a class? And I usually spread it down to those numbers so I can make sure I'm comparing apples to apples.
Ms. Barnhart?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just add, I know we have a great partnership with the pre-K, and we've seen that grow tremendously with the support from you guys on the county side. And so if we can also include that ratio in the pre-K centers as well, because they have very strict regulations and with that.
I'm sure Commissioner Zappel would appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, you have in your packet highlight from U.S. News and World Report, and Dr. Barnes is going to speak to that.
Yep. Well, first I need to let you know that you're in the company or the impact of a celebrity over here in the corner.
Yes.
Ms. Hannah Moon, Southeast Regional Teacher of the Year. And I'm also proud to let you know that Kevin O'Janet, who is a teacher at Myrtle Grove Middle School, is the rookie Southeast Regional Teacher of the Year. So we are one away from a coveted hat trick. But the great news about this report that I just included in here for you is more than 40% of our schools register on the U.S. News and World Report best elementary and best middle schools in the state. So that is something that shows up when someone looks for a house. It's something that shows up when people Google that. They are also helpful enough to send us a way that we can buy our own plaques if we would like from the U.S. News and World Report.
Yeah.
But it is a definite trend, and if you want to, your eyes will glaze over, but you can read the way that they do their calculation, and it does calculate for things like free and reduced lunch number, ethnicity, and things like that, so you are trying to make sure that every school kind of gets a fair shot. But 40% is a great ratio, and so 18 schools out of the ones that we have, so I thought that was really good news to make sure you guys hear. Because one thing you guys said last time is, geez, we don't really talk enough about the great things that are happening too, or reinforce the things that things are going in a positive direction. So I want to make sure you guys got that included.
Thank you, Dr. Barnes. And next we have a county budget overview. It is going to be on the overheads, and it is going to be on the document assembly for the public to look at, and Eric Friedel's going to lead us in that.
Sure, thank you. So I think this was originally on last meeting's agenda, just sort of to provide general information. We're trying to do a level set last meeting with just kind of general information, and was asked to provide kind of an overview of where the county's revenue comes from and how much we fund for the schools. So I've just got a few slides here, and stop at any point if you have questions. So the first slide, beyond the cover page, is our revenue sources that the county has available to us. That's predominantly property tax, as you can see, and sales tax. Those two categories add up to 82% of our total revenue that becomes available. So those are the county's two primary revenue sources that we're able to provide services for, and also provide our funding for the schools. If that makes sense. The next page is our expenditures, broken out by function. Kind of in the top right, you see education at $114 million. That's combined Cape Fear Community College and the Hanover County Schools. It's about $100 million for the schools and about $14 million for the community college. And then there's education debt, so down to the right in the red piece of the pie, and that relates to bonds that we've issued in the past, the amount of debt service, principal and interest that we pay off each year to retire that debt. And you can see about $31 million of that, and it's about 2/3 schools and 1/3 Cape Fear Community College, so roughly 20 and 10 would be the breakout there as far as our ongoing expenses related to education. So again, you can sort of see if you add up the 25 and the percent in education expenses, and then 7% in the debt, it's about 32%. So roughly a third of our budget is spent on education, predominantly on the school side. And as noted at the bottom, there's some other ancillary costs, ancillary might not be the right word, but other costs the county incurs that we'll go over in just a minute that we contribute to the schools as well. It's not captured in those two pieces of the pie. It's in other categories of the pie that we'll talk about in just a moment. The next page is a bar chart showing the county's contributions to the operating funds of the Hanover County schools, including pre-K, just the trend line over the years. So in the most current budget year, about an additional $5 million was contributed for operational funds to the county schools, $101,510,894, and that was of that $114 million we saw a minute ago. That is going to the New Hanover County schools.
Eric, I have a question.
Yes.
Going back to the pie, would you just speak, just very briefly, on the public safety portion for 4%?
The 4% number? Okay, so that public safety includes normally public safety and sheriff. We break out the sheriff separately, but so the public safety portion there is going to be primarily our emergency management, 911.
Anyone else?
The next page is the county's capital outlay contributions to the New Hanover County schools over time. I need to update this slide. There's a bit of an error on it. We did not include for 2025 a budgeted allocation for capital outlay, but just 2 months ago we approved $6.4 million for the New Hanover County or the New Hanover renovation. So we don't have that on this slide. Need to get that updated.
But that big jump in 2024 was phase one of New Hanover, likely, right?
A portion of it was.
Yeah, a good portion, yeah.
Actually, I don't think it was it, Ashley?
I don't think
Yeah.
so. I would need to pull that. I don't.
There was a special list of projects that were provided to us. I think that added up to $10 million, and we ended up, $4 million was kind of the general budget, and then we were given a list of $10 million, and we funded $6 million of those, but it was for a variety of projects.
Wasn't it like a catch-all of stuff that had been languishing? Right. I thought so too. Yeah.
I don't have that list.
Because I was going to ask about that, because that's a substantial jump from 4.6 in 2023 to 10.1. Ms. Justice?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify, and Dr., you can also help me, back me up on this. All of the facilities, all the funding part of that has to come from local funds, correct?
All the fund,
For facilities.
unless the state offers a specific grant or something with it, yeah.
But legally, according to
Right.
the state statutes, we have to pay locally here for all of our facilities and the facility upkeep, correct?
Generally, historically, the breakdown was supposed to be, ever since the Depression, really, that the state is going to fund the staff and the county is going to fund the local operating expenses and capital items. Over the last 100 years, obviously, we have needed to begin to use our local budget simply because the state allotment formulas have not kept up with the need in buildings. But that was the way it was supposed to initially intended to be, was, okay, local government, you guys handle the capital projects, operating expenses, state's going to handle staffing. And then every district I've ever been in have blended the two together over time.
And just for additional clarification, we do get lottery funding from the state that has to be spent on capital facility projects. So there is some state funding that comes through lottery.
Chris, piggybacking what you're saying, that local contribution to operating costs, if I may have the numbers slightly wrong, we're up to about 600 teachers that we fund through New Hanover County every year.
That number does vary every year depending on the stuff we get from the state, and so it sort of blends back and forth. One of the things that we do is the state will fund a position, not a dollar amount.
Right.
And generally you see some movement back and forth where we will try to put the most expensive teachers on the state dollar because the state funds by position, you guys fund by dollar, and so generally the teachers who are earlier in their career are locally paid.
So
But that number does go from, it's been as low as 500, it's been as high as 700.
All right, so that formula we started out with the state and the county, that has been blurred considerably.
Yeah, and don't let that limit your thinking in funding.
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Merrick's next, and then Ms. Justice.
Thank you, Ms. Sutton, for bringing up the lottery. Of all the times I spoke with people during my campaign, I can't tell you the number of people who asked about, well, what about, where is this lottery money? Now, if I remember correctly, it's only, what, 2.5 million or something. It's not a lot that comes from that each year. Can you specify?
Right, and that's true, and we get that funding quarterly, and it does vary because it depends on lottery proceeds, how much we receive. But I'll be glad to provide that information, like what we've received over the past couple of years through lottery.
But am I correct? It's 2.5, 3 million, something like that per year?
I want to say that's correct, but I don't have that in front of me to know for the previous years.
That
Eric,
sounds
do you
about
happen
right.
to
I had
remember?
2 to 2.5 million in my head.
Yeah,
Mhm.
sounds right to me.
It's certainly not the panacea that you were led to believe it would be.
Oh, yeah.
I just want the public to
Oh, the
understand
people-
that we don't get a
gotcha.
lot. I mean, this is for the film, okay?
And not encouraging you to go buy lottery tickets, because that doesn't translate directly to us.
Ms. Justice.
Okay, a lot of people here have not been in the longevity situation that I have, watching budgets being formed in schools, being able to be sourced with their funding. This is a sad situation, and especially for the county commissioners. It's not on you, the fact that the state has, over the last 12 years, cut back significantly on state funding for our positions more than anything. So these decisions that you're making now is something you didn't have to deal with as a body 10, 15 years ago. And there's a lot of confusion. It's not that we're trying to do any more to try to improve in the sense that we haven't done that in the past. It's out of necessity, because the state, we went from, in 2012, we went from 27th in the nation in per pupil expenditure in North Carolina, as dictated by the state legislature, till today, we're 49th. I think we might have gone up to 48th, yay. And in the nation, in North Carolina, because of the way the state legislature funds us. So please, don't think that we're trying to keep coming back and asking for more and more because you guys have done anything wrong, or that we did anything wrong. It's because you're now a funding source that 10 or 15 years ago, I started in education 30 years ago, this was not the case at all. So I just want everybody to understand that if, when they feel that, we're coming for too much, it's not that. We just have to do this because our funding sources are drying up from the state.
Yeah, it's about survival. really.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. We've got some of the logic at the bottom, and there was no capital allocation in the budget. We talked about the $6.4 million. There was some backlog as far as money spent that we were holding, $12.5 million, and that's working its way through the system now. So that was sort of the thought, to let that money get spent from prior years, and we allocated again an extra $5 million for operating. So that was sort of the trade-off there. Okay. The next slide shows some of the other contributions that the county provides to the schools. The first one really gets back to the revenue source, and it's just something to be aware of. The schools have historically received about $1.4 million from the red light program in the city. The city and county have split that cost historically 50-50. We basically have to pay a third-party provider to have the cameras and do all the administration work, and then 90% of the proceeds go to the schools, and it adds up to about $1.4 million on an annual basis. The city of Wilmington's administered that program history, and they've decided to discontinue that program, and so that's going to be $1.4 million of recurring funding that's going to disappear for fiscal year 26, and just want to make sure that you're aware of that. The next item is school nurses, and again, these are costs that are not within the pie chart of the education we talked about. Just for informational purposes, again, we provide a school nurse in every school in the county at a cost of approximately $5 million. The current cost in fiscal year 25 for that is county $3.5 million. The Hanover County Schools about $1.5 million is the breakdown. Similarly, on the mental health side, we have a school counselor available for every school. The total cost is $4.4 million. The county is now paying that entire amount. There was a contract in place for $680,000 in prior years, but it was not renewed for fiscal year 25. On the county side, we are funding that this year. It was a tough budget year for everybody in fiscal year 25. We're funding that not from our general fund, but from our hospital escrow proceeds for fiscal year 25 is where that $4.4 million is coming from.
Let me just resonate with that for just 1 second, because I do think that's something that the general public doesn't get a chance to see as often. Besides our general operating expenses that come from the county, there are numerous programs that we collaborate on which still benefit our kids as well. Those three that are listed up there, school nurses and mental health therapists, I cannot tell you how important those positions are in schools. Not that it's great that we don't manage them, but I will tell you, as speaking as a principal, having one more person to support and one less person to manage also means a lot as well. We don't also want to forget SROs, pre-K, and some of those other support systems, athletic field stuff that we collaborate on. There really is a lot of ways, so don't get the thinking that, well, the county commissioners aren't giving enough. Sometimes you don't see the complete picture either, because some of those things are sort of, school adjacent, right? They directly support the schools, but they may not be listed in that original budget. So we realize that as well. So I just want to make sure I highlighted that.
And you've really touched on the items on the next page.
Oh, dang it, sorry, I was going to wait. Oh, dang it. Read ahead, Barnes.
SROs, we got that listed out. We got some other targeted programs that are handled by our community justice and sheriff's department listed. And then we do some things for the school athletic facilities within the county. So we've got those listed out, and just sort of wanted to let you see the complete picture of the county support to the county schools.
And I just wanted to add to, I'm sorry, I'm speaking out of turn a little bit. I just wanted to add to, so when we were looking at our slides before and we're looking at expenditures on our books, these items that he just covered on these two slides, these are not included in our numbers. So, well, some of these. So, for example, and I just want to make sure everyone's picking up on that. So for like school nurses, it says New Hanover County Schools cost $1.5 million. Or maybe that's not a good example. I was trying to find an example, Eric, of we pay part, but you guys pay a bigger part. Maybe the SROs is a good example, where we are paying $3.7 million, or we're paying $400,000, but the county is picking up $3.7 million. So that $3.7 million isn't included in the $101 million that we were talking about before on what they fund. So I just wanted to make sure that the committee knew that that wasn't included.
Okay, and I'm going to take privilege here, and I'm going to speak to the Elements program. We have a student in one of our schools right now that Elements has been with him for like the last 4 years. I mentored this child, and I cannot tell you the difference it's made. Pick him up from school, go have lunch with him, just be there in a family death. Just so amazing. Please don't ever cut the funding for Elements. It is an amazing project, a part of the Sheriff's Department. And I have a first-hand child who, they made the difference in his at-risk level, just tremendously so. Thank you. Now, Dr. Merrick, I think you're next.
I'm just trying to get clarity. When I took these pie charts and we talk about how much goes to education debt, and the sheriff's program, when we're talking about 4.1 million for school resource officers, does that come in the pie chart under sheriffs or under New Hanover schools?
It's under sheriff.
Yes, thank you.
I think Ms. Barnhart's next, and then we'll get to you, Mr. Zappel.
Defer to Josie any day.
Thank you, Manager. I would like some clarity. I know the red light revenue is not being renewed. What are some of the assets that are coming out that benefit the schools at this time, of just as far as, do we know precisely? I don't know if that's, because
Ask that question again, I'm sorry.
the red light revenue program, the 1.4 that will no longer be in the budget, what are some of those things that are coming out of there that we're not going to have that in fiscal year 26?
So we do not break out our revenue
Okay.
that way. So yeah, we don't say red light revenue funds these three things. We just collect all the revenue and then we build a budget based on the revenue.
Commissioner Zappel.
Thank you. I just wanted to reemphasize something that is here, but I think she needs to be focused on, is that every time we're talking about a split of money coming in to support things like school nurses or mental health therapists or SROs, when we refer to the New Hanover County Schools portion of that, all that money comes from the county. So these are all coming out of taxpayers' things. It's a little bit of a frustration when, from the county commission's standpoint, is that we get little or no credit for that. yet we know how important it is, and sometimes feel as though we're we're banging the drum over here and shoveling the money out, and we're still hearing complaints about where that's coming from. So, and we look at, it comes starkly into view when we look at the pie charts here, or the bar graphs, we see essentially $101 million going for the schools. When you start totaling up everything, including the debt, in those debt payments, which are often put over in another area over here, that's all taxpayer money coming from the county. You put it all in, we're looking north of $140 million that the county is making sure that the schools have to be able to operate. And oh boy, Eric, if I misspoke, maybe that 140, I was my back of the envelope, which I'm infamous for, to kind of throw in. But the point is, it's substantially higher than what gets thrown out there on a daily basis or in pie charts here. We do a tremendous amount. Just wanted to take that moment to stand on the soapbox.
And we agree with you. It's frustrating to me when I see headlines and other things that say, $5 million is what you gave us. And they don't, somehow it never drills down to the biggest amount of what you do. And these two slides, 6 and 7, are really important. I'm hoping the media is listening and they will report on slides 6 and 7 from the county, because these are an important part of our financing. Yes.
Okay.
Go for it.
I just want to emphasize too that having been on the other side as well through many of these budget seasons, I just want to say from my perspective, even as a citizen, New Hanover County Schools are educating a workforce and also doing a lot of community service. So in a way, it's almost like, I think the frustration I felt on the other side this past budget season was the disconnect between what the schools mean to the community and what the county is doing. I think it's obviously great that the county does more and more because they have to. Otherwise, can you imagine 500 to 700 teachers not being funded that the state should fund? It's, I don't know. I just hope when we go forward, and this is a step in the definite right direction of looking at it like New Hanover County Schools is part of the county in a lot of ways, and the funding it is for the betterment of the workforce and the students and the community, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because the more we come together on that and agree, I think the more successful the whole county will be. And, I'm looking at my hardworking teachers here, but y'all are on the ground every day, and principals, and you see it for yourself, and, the amount of work that y'all do that doesn't even get probably even highlighted, and maybe put a dollar amount to it. I just want to stress that, and I'm glad we're coming together, and I hope we do this very regularly. Especially during budget.
Yes. And then we're going to move on.
I appreciate your comment about the county funds, because when I looked at school resource officers and that $400,000 for the schools, I truly thought, maybe the $400,000 is from state for safety or federal. I didn't know where that piece of our $400,000 came, but I thought it was going to be just the combination of what we had to bring to the table plus what the commissioners brought to the table.
All county taxpayer money.
Okay, Ms. Justice, we're going to watch time, if you can save that question. We're moving on to something really, really cool. And you should be getting one of these little neat cards right here, and Dr. Barnes is going to take over this part of this discussion. Just hang it till the end. If we have time, we'll come back to it, because I don't want to run out of time.
Okay, so you guys are my guinea pigs for the way this is going to go. Like I spoke earlier, I'm doing about 7 or 8 of these public-facing, employee-facing opportunities for everyone who works in this district to be a part of generating the budget, to be a part of talking about the priorities that we do bring to the county commissioners. Now, speaking back to what Ms. Justice said earlier, we do get funding from the feds, we get funding from the state, we get funding from the local government. The only impact, the only move that we have control over is the county one. The state is what it is, the feds are what they are, so this is our one opportunity to move the needle. However, one thing I think that for you as county commissioners you need, and for you as the county office needs, is clear, understandable, transparent asks that are directly related to student achievement. Now, I always loved it when my kid said, I need more allowance money, but never specified why, right? So I think this is an activity for us to look at the complexity of this issue as well. And it goes back to what Stephen Covey talks about when he talks about beginning with the end in mind. So what I'm asking, what I'm hoping to come out of is when I get done at the end of the month, I'm going to have 50 or 60 of these cards that are all specific enough that we can start developing what I'm going to call superintendent budget priorities. So we have our operating budget that comes from the county commissioners. We have created a budget now that we have sort of realigned ourselves that takes care of our operating expenses. What we're looking at now is what problems do we as a group want to fix with this district next? What are our impacts? What are going to help kids? What do we want to focus on? So this is a group activity, so you can certainly work with the people around you. You can, I don't know, find a friend. But I think I want to walk you through what I'm looking for with this, and then I want you guys to give me some feedback on it, because I'm doing it again next week with different groups of people, okay? So for this, the challenge is I want us to focus on what is the main concern. What is a concern that needs fixing in the district? And we can brainstorm, we can write down whatever, you guys can work together. I'm going to walk you through an example just to make it a little clearer, okay? So when I look at our data, when I look at our trend data over the course of several years, last time we met, I showed you a slide that shows us number 4 in the Big 12. Remember we talked about the Big 12, the largest 12 districts in the state? We are 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in every single category that gets measured year after year except for 2. One is Math 1, one is graduation rate. When I look at our attendance data, our chronic absenteeism is a specific issue. When I look at school safety, the number of times that we have to go into a lockdown, maybe not a lockdown that's externally generated, because sometimes those happen too, but an internal lockdown. So those are some of the problem areas that I want us to focus on. What is the problem? And then we'll backwards map that towards what the solution could be. Does that make sense? So I want you guys to sort of generate amongst yourselves some conversation, and then we're going to write down probably 5 or 6 of these, and we're going to map through, and you guys tell me if this is a good format to look through. Does that make sense? All right, so I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to not zero in on the solution right now, but what is, again, if we could open the door and say this is the biggest thing in the district that needs changing, what is it? Generate some ideas, then we're going to come back and pick a few of them, okay? Okay? On your way.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to circle in case there are data points you guys have specific questions about.
You need a New Hanover County Commissioner funded team there.
That's fun stuff.
It's perfect. What are you thinking, sir? What is yours?
What is that, I mean, absenteeism, locker, I mean, you know, it's like house. Yes, behavioral support, I mean, things that are gonna be like, yes.
Disagreement on that's a little alone.
And I would agree with you, and I'm going to take you out even a step further. I think it's early intervention. It's all about early intervention. That includes pre-K, that includes social workers getting into the homes to find our kids that need special ed, that are parents who don't know what's in it. It's getting out into the communities and bringing resources to the families so that they can getting kids who maybe have autism, they're getting early intervention supports, and they're getting therapies before they even step forward, and they're getting everything so that they can learn the skills to be successful. It's early intervention, and I think under early intervention is parent resources, it's pre-K, it's therapy, it's social workers to go out and because if you look at graduation rate and attendance, all of that is a predictor for back in kindergarten. The way a kid is in school from kindergarten is an early indicator for how they'll be when they graduate. So I would agree with you. Yes. Yeah. Early intervention. Listen, he came and planted a tree at Trask 4 years ago. It's still there. All four, well, actually, 3 out of 4. 3 out of 4. The kid's got a hold one. Sorry.
Let's go down this for a moment. This, graduation rate. We're data from recent why is that not translated into
Are those people potential?
probably not, but I think there will be some sort of halo effect, that education
I just think, like myself included, living in Wilmington is expensive. And I do think a lot of families with younger age children, where they're starting a family, right? They go to school at UNCW, they find a job, but they can't afford that $1,700 a month even in apartments. So they find a house and leave. They find a house, and I think that's a piece. Here, that's generational. That's a long time. But I think, to your point, that there are educated people here, I don't necessarily know that there's a correlation to that, to being those who have children. But I don't, I know, like, I have friends who are because they can get a bigger house and get what they want. I would tell you, in my heart, I want to say no. online, I can tell you, because it correlates back to the attendance, which is why, again, even with your social workers, I don't know how, but then there's your social worker, right? So then we get them to school. Social worker gets them to school, but then mental health, because why did they not want to come to school in the first place, right? So we worked really hard to get them there, but now they've missed all this work. So now they're mentally, I can't handle this. I can't handle the workload. Teachers trying to keep up with the pace and the standard. Counselors trying to help them. Mental health therapies pulling them if they're there in school. It doesn't. But it correlates. I would tell you attendance is the least. I would tell you my chronically absent kids are
Okay, can we come back together?
I would have been happy to.
Yes, I know.
So rather than regroup everybody, I just want to do a touch base with you guys and see where you are.
Guys, let's come back to,
I just want to do a real touch point with you. You had several different groupings out here. Can we go around the room and share some of the big ticket items that you guys have listed as specific problem areas? Anybody want to start? Philip, what you got?
We said attendance, which is very much the result of mental health and things that are happening outside in the community, socially related.
So let's, this chronic absenteeism, I'm gonna reference that. Hannah, what did you guys come up with?
We talked a lot about a little bit of everything, but I specifically brought up overcrowding, which I know is not a fixable thing, but also attendance and safety.
Okay, attendance, safety. Kim, what did you guys come up with?
We definitely were on attendance as well, but we spoke a lot about early intervention.
Early intervention, that's another good.
Well, pre-K being under that, so.
Well, I think that's what you meant by early intervention is universal pre-K, right? What did you guys come up with?
Disparity.
And therapy and resources, lots of things.
I'm sorry, disparity?
Disparity in performances between schools.
Disparity of what, I'm sorry?
Disparity of performance between schools.
Performance disparity, okay. And there's a lot that factors into that as well. What did you guys, I'm sorry, did you have something different?
In fact, just basically with staff.
Right.
Because that's all tied together, just what you said.
And I think that's maybe where the solution may be to some of these, but that's where I want us to go. The problem is the disparity. What's the, and we'll get to the next step, hold on. Did you guys have anything different than that? Okay. So even this group of some of the smartest people we could find, the smartest people we have, let's just say it that way. Sorry, I realized that didn't sound nice the first time. We came up with some of the big ticket items like early intervention, attendance, safety, graduation rate. Those are big problems, right? So now, yes, ma'am.
you skipped Attorney.
I'm sorry.
And I.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Okay, facilities.
And for me, literacy. If our kids can't read, we just have failed completely.
Okay. But you guys see what I'm getting at. You're coming up with some real big ticket specific items. Now it gets a little harder, okay? The next step I'm going to ask you to go back and do is come up with the data point that, say we do go to the county commissioners with an initiative to fix the graduation rate. I need to know what data point I would use to prove that that was successful or not successful. And obviously, graduation rate is a good example of that. But what would success look like, right? Is it 2%? Is it 5%? Is it above the state? Is it best in the region? When you look at attendance, what would be the way to prove that our attendance is better than it was? Does that make sense? So the next step is to find me the data point that I can use to prove that solution. All right, so take another minute and do that.
1 minute.
Oh, I'll do it. No, I'm picking on, all right, I'll be super fast.
Brian, you want to play?
19 minutes left.
We have what?
We have to go through future meeting topics and
Okay.
then basically adjourn.
Okay, yeah, I'll be,
You're fine.
the next step, I don't need to do the backside, I think.
I think you should add data points.
I
where you
think
want
so
data
too.
points,
And then I
yeah.
do want to ask for any feedback on the form.
Yeah, I talked with Lisa and Eric, and they said my idea for the numbers was a good. No one likes to write an essay except for you.
Fair enough. Hurtful, but fair enough. This mic is on.
Yeah, I was one of those kids when they said write an essay. I just like wanted to completely out.
You run a magazine.
I know. That's what the irony of it. That's the irony.
I'll give on a goal for these, the numbers for these sides. I think this needs to be one goal, because I don't want to include a whole bunch of stuff in there. I wonder if on this side.
Okay, your minute's up. Let's come back to order. Take it away, Dr. Barnes.
Okay, folks, I'm just sort of drawing a line chart here, so I'm getting absenteeism. Tell me what your data point would be.
Look at a couple of we can look at the overall for the district. Can we improve that by 5%? And that's a big jump, but then we also started drilling down to how many absences within a week, or the number, because that's what, when we take a look in Power School, it identifies students that are chronically absent by missing more than 2 days in a month. And so drilling that down to get a better number.
All right, so chronic absenteeism would be the data point. Disparity, what would you guys have as your data point?
Suspension, referrals, obviously grades, post-secondary enrollment. Parent-teacher conference involvement. It's a hard one to measure, it's very qualitative, but how much is our community getting involved in our schools?
Okay. And you're looking, you just sort of broad spectrum antibiotic that, because those data points go for different solutions. Is the suspension one versus the end of grade scoring disparity between schools? There's a lot in there that you can unpack. Okay.
Well, we already have an end of grade scoring part of our strategic plan with 2027 third grade score, which directly impacts how is our pre-K performing, how are K2 scores performing, how are we readying our students for third grade, which we know.
And what supports are we building for our 5 schools that are showing the greatest struggle with that data point? What are we doing for them? Okay, got it. Graduation rate, okay, I'm going to go with graduation rate.
Well, so I'm a believer in living performance measures.
Okay.
So I would actually have you set it up as your first year is the baseline, what is our graduation rate. Your second year, we also were talking about implementing a 3E program. Your students need to either enroll, enlist, or import. So your second and third year, I want to see a 2% increase in graduation rates for each one of the categories. And then 5 and beyond is something we want to achieve, that 100% of students are at least enrolled, employed, or enlisted.
Okay.
That we would make our 5-year goal.
I am going to try to keep us on time, so safety, facilities, literacy, you guys know kind of what that format looks like. I'm going to move to the next step so we can get all steps in before I have to leave you guys, because I also need feedback from you guys about this. The next step is really easy. If your number 2, okay, your first is your problem, your second is your data point. If that data point improved, that bottom right corner there, how will this make a difference for students? Okay, chronic absenteeism. If we licked that problem, what would it do for students? If we had a safer school building, what would that do for students? Look at the outcome measurement right down to. Does that make sense?
Students would become productive citizens.
It's down time.
I know. I'm teasing you.
I know you are.
significant cognitive disabilities that,
It's not bad.
you know, there are certain kids who are never going to pass the end-of-grade assessment.
That makes it fun. Moving the ball.
Right, because if early intervention is fully funded in terms of pre-K and services, kids will reach their potential, which, yes, could be measured by
10
reaching the
seconds.
milestones in their K-2 assessments. But I also think long-term,
Jared,
then become productive citizens.
Okay.
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 So once you get that step of how it's going to help kids, if you flip your card over, there's a place there to put out outcome objectives and then what steps you want to do. What would you need to do to get to that goal? Okay? Now, I don't want to lose you guys without getting some feedback on how this would work out in groups. So when I get to, like, Hannah Moon is one of the folks that helps lead the teacher advisory committee. When I get to your folks, we're going to break into smaller groups. So you're going to be in sort of pods, and maybe you guys are all working on one problem specifically, right? So you'll be able to guide you through that. Does this format make sense? What should I change about it? How would you adapt this sort of activity for a group of people who isn't as aware of the nut intricacies as you guys are? Does that make sense? Imagine if you're, just a parent walks out of this, someone who just comes in off the street. I want to make sure this is tailored to where everybody can absorb it. So give me some feedback, sir.
So you're asking feedback on the form itself?
On the form, activity, whatever you want, go crazy.
So I've done strategic planning when I worked downtown, and the biggest thing that I've learned is that you don't show them all the questions up front. You almost use the whiteboard easels with the tear-off sheets.
Okay.
But don't tear them off. When they fill out that sheet, you flip it over, and then they see the next question.
Okay.
Don't give them all the questions, because now they're overwhelmed. It's like,
Do the activity, and then this is kind of the final step.
Yeah.
So if I do the activity, then hand out the cards?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's like giving somebody a job description that's 2 or 3 pages long, and, oh yeah, you don't get paid, this is a volunteer job. Just give me one, just tell me give me one thing, give me one task at a time.
Okay.
And then it's achievable, and if you're gonna do 5 minutes for each question, you got 25 minutes here. And you got
Okay.
5 minutes in between each session,
Yeah.
now you're at an hour.
So I can do it on a chart first, put all the charts up against
Yeah.
the wall as they go, and then ask them to refine it on this so they don't have all
Yeah.
scribbles and scratch outs on it.
Yeah, just keep
That's a good one.
everything categorized together, keep it, just keep it all together, but one question at a time, because first thing we did when we got our card, we switched it over, see what,
Yeah.
we're not gonna ever get this done in 5 minutes.
And imagine doing it with a group of teachers who have to have it perfect and right. They're going to want, what's my grade? And where's the rubric to how I did this well? All right, that's really good feedback. Forget everything we did today for next Thursday. You're going to act surprised when I do
Barnes,
it for you guys.
I would just also add, it would be nice, because you're going to get better answers when they're passionate about the topic that was chosen.
Okay.
So even if you sent out a Google form, like, if there was one thing that you think, and then we submitted it, and then you combined them into 6 or 7 different things, and then when you got there, you could go to the group that you're most passionate
Well,
about.
could I do that if we did what he said and put a chart,
Yes,
every chart of
because then I think
of
you
the
would work
biggest,
through it.
biggest challenges or concerns and then group them by that?
Yeah, I think you have, 4 issues? Absentee, safetyism, graduation, math 1. It's the 4 corners of the building. And then when you go to that corner, you ask them how to solve the problem.
Yeah, but
and
I
you
also
keep them
want,
there until they finish
I
it.
fed the beast a little bit in here, but with the principals, I want them to come up with the problems themselves. I don't want to already have pre-made what the problems are, you know what I mean? But that makes sense. Okay.
They started.
We've
that work
already
as soon as the
started.
principal agenda
You
came.
sent us that email, we've already started.
Of receivers.
Fair
Dr.
enough.
Barnes.
Yeah, Jenna.
I will say your data, what you shared with us at the beginning, did give us a healthy framework to not go off, because there were many, many topics we could talk about. So you sharing how being part of the Big 12 and where we stand and which ones we need maybe to take a look at helps us put down our baggage, our thing that we're really passionate about, to take enough time to look at the big picture of the district, to brainstorm what's
Is that
best for
going
the
to
district.
limit you guys at all if I do it that way?
I found it helpful because otherwise we would be sitting over here talking about facilities, and we didn't talk about facilities, we talked about social workers. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and we talked about facilities. Our county folks, any input? Commissioners and staff?
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, I would just add to, I know we have different needs on our different levels of school, pre-K, elementary, secondary. So that might also yield a different conversation. Where we have a need in elementary might be a different focus, where a high school need might be. And so when you're talking about wanting to move the district forward, of course we want to increase goal, but the elementary school goals might look a little bit differently than what middle school might need to help accomplish those things. So I could see a differentiated approach even at the levels of school buildings too, and potentially different steps to take to be successful in those goals. So I think that could also create another layer in this conversation.
Okay, level. Also, I think it's interesting to see, once we develop these all the way out, how many of these are going to overlap each other? How many of your guys' solutions for graduation rate are going to be the same solution for chronic absenteeism, right? So I think you could almost lay them out in order of, that's, okay, really good. Fascinating. Any other feedback? Does this make sense as an activity?
Dr. Barnes, just one other thing that I think was positive here, the way it was presented and the way it would be presented with that adjustment, it's not focused on admiring a problem. We quickly admire a problem, we quickly discover a problem or identify one, but most of this time is spent towards how do we eliminate the barrier, what challenges do we need to overcome, what will it look like when it's successful. Those are the things that we talked a little bit about return on investment. What we want to do is present something that is going to be fixable, and when it's fixable, we will have this investment at the end that goes right back into New Hanover County.
I think that what's good about this, I lost my train of thought. I think that's good too, because we're focused on how do we solve something, solution oriented,
Okay.
Do you see the value in this? Can you imagine? My only thing is, now we are going to do with the public facing meetings, there's two different forums. There's one for staff and one for parents and stakeholders. We're going to be doing a briefer version of the PowerPoint that we gave you last time. So it grounds everybody a little bit in the basic knowledge before I throw this at them. Okay, all right, cool. Thank you.
Let's take the next 5 minutes and talk about our next meeting topics. And I think I have 5 or 6 of them here just to throw out. And then you guys tell me what you're thinking. Overview of capital spending, overview of capital planning, facility needs. I don't know that you have a handout of this. It's on the slides, but it's not. I don't think it's in the printed packet. Obviously, potential bond projects, capital needs not covered by potential bond projects, areas in need of replacement schedule. I know that speaks to Ms. Barnhart. We had on here review of all revenue streams, school funds, community use, etc. PTA, a separate entity. But do you all feel like we've covered that at this point? Do you feel like we've covered revenue streams? Is everyone comfortable understanding our revenue streams? If not, now's the time to say. And the central office staffing, central office full-time equivalency versus pre-pandemic to now. I think, is that discernible out of what we have in these handouts here?
Not
the 2018 forward?
We
Okay.
have, Scott has been running that report we can make.
Is this something that is of interest to you? That's what I'm asking. We want this to be relevant and allow you to bring your questions and concerns to the table now instead of later. Another one is legislative strategies discussion. We've been talking about, obviously if we need more money out of the state, we need to strategize on how we're going to get there, and that's going to come into your to your legislative committee, which Ms. Barnhart chairs. And then the mental health and funding, that's another possible topic for us to discuss. And when we look at the county's numbers on how much, school nurses and mental health is funding, is that something we need to talk about? So you can send an email to Ashley or Jenny and just say, these are the things that I want to talk about. And do you have anything now that you want to throw out there?
One thing I'd like to do is, I'll be doing these meetings all month. The next time we meet next month, I'd like to bring back for you guys like the top 10 and kind of say, okay, which one of these are we, because I think we need to bring a manageable number forward. We can't bring 40. So I'd like you guys to help me decide what is a manageable number and then winnow down the ones that we have. I'll try to group it into like and like kind of thing, and then we'll be able to narrow those down to a reasonable number to achieve. Because there are so many initiatives that we'll be able to do at one time successfully as well. So I'll bring that to the next meeting.
Yes.
Madam Chair, what is a replacement schedule?
That is for things like our HVAC, our intercoms, our
Roofs.
roofs.
Replacement.
What is a pattern of getting us to where we're fixing it before it's broken?
Yeah, being proactive versus reactive, and right now
Yes,
we're
ma'am.
majorly in the reactive mode. Majorly. Yes.
I might just suggest that when you run the list, we might all be able to kind of look at it together and try to prioritize, 1, 2, 3,
Right,
4.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. My biggest hope is that I bring 10 or 12 of these written clearly and nicely, and I'll get copies for everybody to mess with. Because then you can sort of order them, What is? Oh, that's right.
And, okay, the next item is next meetings, and it'll be up here, but we thought we'd be proactive and going after January 30th, February 28th, and if needed, March 27th. But this is one, we should be at the midpoint here with what we're taking in and headed towards the last portion of this. So that, because remember, we have said that the budget will go
April
to you
15th.
April 15th. We're way ahead of last year's schedule, so just throw that completely out of your head. We are not going to be doing this in June or
Ms.
May.
Bradford, I'm looking at the schedule. January 30th is a hold for a tentative budget meeting with the county and also
Yeah.
a general meeting.
And I actually thought it was January 27th, but it's that last week of this month, because we're only on the 3rd now, and it's a long month. This might be incorrect, but it was to be the last week of January, and then one in February and one in March, if we need it.
Right. I'm just telling you, that's already on the schedule.
We have a conflict. Okay, that works. Any questions, comments? Yes, ma'am.
Doing this particular process with this school district since 2018, and I'm so glad to see that it's now being proactively addressed the way it should have been. But I do want to give kudos to the people back when I started in 2018, because a lot of people can say other things about that past administration with this before the even previous administration, but they did do a good job, and you probably are aware of this from looking at past records. They did do a good job of starting early on the budget, and it usually was in January, and bringing everybody in on regular meetings. So I'm glad to see that we've reestablished that, and it's the way,
Yeah.
it's moving forward in a positive direction.
And we're absolutely committed to that. And that reminds me, the U.S. News and World Report and the other, Hannah Moon and our other pending awards, we credit those that came before us. This wasn't something we did overnight. I got elected in 2022. We didn't make that change. We can help the culture, but this is a long-term effort, and we want to give credit where credit is due. So if no one else has anything else, then
Madam Chair,
Yes,
just
sir.
in response to the dates we have up there, January 30th is already a hold for
Yes,
the
sir.
county.
We're aware.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll
just said
fix
that,
that.
right?
Somehow I thought it was supposed to be the 27th, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, so you'll lose your county people if we stick with that 30th, so. if
No,
we
we're
move that-
not going to stick to the 30. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out, and we'll get to you. Hopefully, we can get to you this week with that date so that we can get on your calendars.
And my last superintendent budget priority listening session is on the 23rd. I'll need a little time to sort of collate and mess with the stuff before I meet back with you guys, so it may be a little bit, I'll need a little bit of time.
So you're on the Thursday, the 23rd.
That's my last one.
And it seemed like, yeah, we did actually pick the 30th, and I know why we picked it. So Ashley, if you want to throw out a date right now that could be an alternative between the 27th and the 29th, we could look at that. But it seems like there's something in there that was a hindrance.
I think the 31st was a possibility.
Does anybody have?
Dr. Barnes, was the 31st an issue on your calendar?
Every day is like this bad.
Was 31st a possible, and we just went to the 30th?
Say again?
Yes. So the January 31st is a possibility, if that
Yeah,
works.
so doodle that down and let us know. And with that,
Well, I do have a last question.
go ahead.
So if we do stick with some dates, we got to make sure they're out ahead of time. I think there was some confusion yesterday in the office about how many commissioners were invited. I think we should decide who is going to ride this out, unless you want people to rotate. It's going to be a little bit harder that way, I think.
Yeah, we knew with the 3rd, they were going to be people on vacation still. But I think this has been productive, and I think the timing
Are
of
you
it was
wanting
perfect.
commissioners to rotate in and out, or do you want 2 people the same?
I'm always the more the merrier crowd. If all the commissioners want to come, I'd be happy for that. We didn't plan to have all of our board members here, but it worked out really well. So,
The only thing I would caution is being careful that we don't
Open
accidentally
meetings.
create.
Yeah, that's the other
Because what we have
issue.
is a 4-person board.
Right, becomes a joint meeting.
I think that's the
Yeah.
concern, is if everybody cleared their calendar and showed up, we couldn't have it.
That's what I'm saying. If you want specific people, you have to ask like really well ahead, because I know the schedule is very tough. And we don't want to create other
we're going to try to
issues.
get to that in the next couple of days, okay? And I appreciate you guys dropping in and as audience members and joining us. Yes, ma'am.
I don't think it can be for the county folks, though. And I took that over to you, Brian, is that?
Looked into that right away and started, once we announced it.
We assumed that we would never get all the county commissioners, even if we invited them all. We assumed we would never get all of us if we did. And that was for the core group. So, would anyone like to offer a motion to adjourn?
Ooh, I do.
Okay, all right, and I'll second it. And we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. I know.